Conor McGregor might not be the same skillful fighter as he once was, but if we're talking about money fights and PPVs, he's still the biggest name out there. He's smashed records in his fights against Khabib and Nate. And now, Paddy Pimblett thinks a potential fight between him and the Irishman could top both those records. Keep watching as we tell why Paddy thinks a McGregor fight would be the biggest PPV in history. First up, a natural charmer. Whether you like him or not, Paddy the Baddy is a natural charmer. Despite being around for only 3 fights, his rise in the UFC is already being compared to the likes of the notorious Conor McGregor. In just his first appearance inside the Octagon, Pimblett blew everyone away with his exceptional striking, earning him a stellar knockout. He's been flawless inside the cage so far, and if you ask us, we don't think he plans on going down so easily. And what's interesting is that Paddy is no stranger to his charm and popularity. The Brit knows what he brings to the table, and maybe that's why he thinks a potential fight against the Irishman could end up being the biggest PPP event in the sport's history. It's a possibility that if he comes back down to 155 pounds, that would be the biggest pay-per-view in the history of the UFC. It would mint a lot of money, no doubt about it. But would it really smash Conor's record fight against Khabib, selling 2,400,000 PPVs, raking in an estimated $180 million? We're a little skeptical, but who knows? The Irishman is still out recovering from a gruesome leg injury he suffered against Dustin Poirier. If Paddy's able to maintain his win streak and momentum until Conor's return to the UFC, there might be a realistic chance of this fight happening. Next, bigger fights on the table. When you think about it, even if the former double champ does make a comeback to the UFC, wouldn't he have bigger fights on the table? A trilogy fight against Nate Diaz? Or a showdown against Charles Oliveira in Brazil? Even Michael Chandler's been calling him out, claiming a fight against McGregor is inevitable in the near future. So yeah, we're definitely not going to rule Paddy out since he might end up building a lot of momentum by Conor's return. But if we're talking about available options, the Notorious has too many of them. And if you've seen a recent photo or a video of the Irishman, you probably noticed how he's the biggest he's ever been. Paddy is pretty big too, but that's because he's been eating all sorts of junk and enjoying his time away from the sport. So if Conor does return to the cage, he'll have to shed at least 30 to 40 pounds to start in the lightweight division. Judging from the amount of muscle he's put on, we reckon he's eyeing the welterweight division with Kamaru Usman in his crosshairs. Moving on, it's all about business. Paddy is thinking in the right direction, we'll give him that much. The boss wants business and the Brit plans to give him just that in a massive fight with Conor. But as we said before, aren't there bigger fights on the table? And don't those bigger fights mean more business? In our opinion, a showdown between Conor and Charles in Brazil would even cross UFC 229's 2,400,000 PPV record. It'll be like taking fans back to that epic Conor and Aldo fight. But then again, let's not forget Alexander Volkanovski has also called out McGregor, and that fight makes a lot of sense too. Volka's trying to cement himself as the greatest featherweights of all time, and to do that, he has to beat Conor. So yeah, it's all about business at the end of the day. The UFC Prez will spend his sweet time thinking things through if Conor ever decides to make a comeback, because it's obvious everyone wants to cash in. Fighters aren't beating around the bush talking about a money fight. They don't want to fight McGregor because there's a point to prove or something. They want the money. Up next, just dreams and nothing else. Everyone's running after a money fight, but no one's talking about the real picture here. The whole reason why we've sort of put a question mark on Conor's return is that it's uncertain. Just recently, he landed a lead role in the remake of the 1989 action film Roadhouse, starring alongside Hollywood superstar Jake Gyllenhaal. So we're not really sure whether he'll want to fight after making his debut appearance in a Hollywood movie, because let's face it, his prime is finished. The man's a money-minting machine. When you have that much value attached to your name, the last thing you want to do is go out and fight people to make money. It's okay to dream, but if we're being realistic, we think all these fights will never materialize because the Notorious will not be making a comeback to the UFC. Sure, he'll fight a couple exhibition fights here and there, and maybe even come back to the UFC for one final fight against Nate Diaz. Apart from that, we think any of these guys would rip McGregor apart, since he's been out of the game for so long. Time for some more on the UFC. Following up with a sudden realization. Either Dana is really slow, or he's just playing dumb. Can you imagine that it took him 3 months to realize that the Khamzat Chimaev vs Nate Diaz fight wouldn't have been a good one? Just recently, the Prez wished Diaz the best of luck and said the UFC will always be home if he ever wants to make a comeback. But in the same press conference, days, Dana admitted the original fight planned out for UFC 279 wouldn't have been too good. Took you long enough, Mr. White. People were literally ready to sue you and the UFC for setting up the biggest mismatch in the history of the promotion. And what's even more messed up is that he did it to a UFC veteran, a guy who's been at the promotion for almost 15 years. We're really glad this fight didn't go through, but just imagine if it had happened. Dana would probably be the most hated man in the fight world right now. Even Diaz said that he never wanted to fight Khamzat, and he asked for at least 3 to 4 opponents before him, but all of them were declined by the boss. It was pretty clear what he wanted. He wanted to teach Nate a lesson for openly calling him out during his last couple months at the promotion. Now for taking over a new division. Khamzat Chimaev might have missed out on a potential championship fight in the welterweight division, but that doesn't mean he wasn't a dominant force. The Wolf maintained his undefeated streak, putting away Kevin Holland at UFC 279, who surprisingly announced his retirement soon after the fight. But at the same time, we can't ignore the fact that Khamzat had a lot of trouble making weight. His coach hinted at a possible move up to the middleweight division, but we found it impossible to believe, since he was just inches away from a shot at the title. But guess what? It's official. Khamzat might not be permanently moving up a weight class, but you best believe his next fight will be in the middleweight division. It's time to dance with the big boys now. He tweeted the number 185, sparking a lot of controversy amongst fight fans who thinks he's going to be fighting Paulo Costa. It's mostly been a one-sided affair so far, with the Brazilian taking shots at Khamzat on Twitter and Instagram. It's been entertaining to say the least, so who knows? We might just see this fight materialize in the coming months. Last but not least, Silva weighs in. Remember when we told you how Silva was a bit annoyed at Dana for not giving him the send-off he deserved? Well, he's weighed in on the whole discussion again, explaining the complex relationship between the UFC and its fighters. Surprisingly, the Brazilian GOAT sided with the promotion, saying Dana White isn't in the wrong when it comes to fighter wages. It's all about bringing in the business. Anderson claims fighters need to have lawyers and managers who are committed to seeing them get paid. Fighters rarely have time to focus on the contract and whatnot, since they're always busy in training and promotion. If you don't have guys on your side who don't want to see you get paid, then you're obviously going to be paid less, right? It makes sense though. Why sign a contract in the first place? You should trust your manager enough to get a good deal, but if you've signed it knowing what you're gonna get, it doesn't really make sense to complain afterward. Think of it this way. Have you ever seen McGregor complain? This man brings value and has the top guys in the league looking out for him. That's it from our side, folks. So what do you think? Will Paddy ever get a chance to fight McGregor? Or are all these just dreams and nothing else? Let us know in the comments below. Remember, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more original and entertaining content in the future. Thanks for watching, guys, and see you next time.